I never thought a single decision could change everything. But it did. It started on an ordinary Thursday afternoon, or at least that's what I thought. My name is Simon, and I've always considered myself a reasonable man. I don't overreact, don't make rash decisions. I'm the type of guy who likes to keep things balanced. Maybe too balanced, if I'm being honest. It all began with a conversation. Not a heated argument or a fight that you could see coming, but one of those conversations where you're sitting down and suddenly the world around you goes silent. It was just after lunch. I was sitting at my desk, going over emails when Zoe, my wife of 2 years, walked into the room. She had a strange look on her face, a mixture of determination and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. "Simon," she said, her voice steady but with a certain coldness. "We need to talk." I had seen her like this before, her eyes sharp and calculating, like she was preparing for something. But there was no immediate reason for it. The day had been calm, uneventful. I was expecting the usual, "How was your day?" or maybe a random topic about our weekend plans. But no, not this time. I stood up, sensing that this wasn't going to be like the other conversations we'd had before. "What's going on?" I asked, but my voice betrayed me. There was an edge to it, a slight quiver that I couldn't hide. She motioned for me to sit back down. I did, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My mind raced through all the possible reasons she might want to talk. Maybe she was upset about something I had said or done recently. Maybe she was just stressed with work. I didn't know. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she said slowly, staring at me as if she was measuring each word. "About what we've been doing here. What we're really doing together." I couldn't help but feel a knot form in my stomach. This wasn't the usual, "let's talk about our relationship" conversation. There was a finality in her tone, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "We're fine, right?" I asked, the words coming out more like a question than a statement. "I mean, we're not having problems. We've been getting along." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at me for a long time. Her expression softened for a moment, but I could still see the walls behind her eyes, the walls I hadn't noticed before. It was as though she was deciding whether to tell me something that would change everything, something I wasn't prepared to hear. "I've been holding back," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "I don't want to keep pretending anymore." I felt a chill run down my spine. Pretending? Was she talking about our marriage? Had I missed something? Had I been so wrapped up in my own world that I hadn't noticed her slipping away? I opened my mouth to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. She wasn't done. "I think you've known for a while, Simon," she continued, her eyes now locking onto mine with a strange intensity, "that I'm not the person you thought I was. That I'm not happy anymore." I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. Was she telling me that she wasn't happy with me? With us? The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. "I'm not in love with you anymore," she said, her voice clear now, as if she had rehearsed it over and over in her mind. "I've been trying to convince myself that I could get over it, that I could feel something again. But I can't. I don't feel it anymore, Simon." The room seemed to close in around me, the air thick with the weight of her words. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to scream, to ask her why, to demand answers. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I sat there, stunned, as if I had just been told something that didn't make sense. You don't love me anymore?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "No," she said simply, without hesitation. "And I think it's time we face it." My mind was reeling, and I couldn't understand what was happening. How had we gone from being happy to this? How had we gotten to the point where she was saying these things so matter-of-factly? The woman I had shared my life with, my dreams with, she was standing in front of me, telling me that it was over. I wanted to ask her so many things. I wanted to ask if there was someone else, if I had done something wrong, if there was any way to fix this. But before I could find my voice, she stood up, walked over to the door, and turned to face me one last time. "I've made my decision, Simon," she said, her tone final. "I'm done." And with that, she walked out of the room, leaving me sitting there, unable to move. I could hear the faint sound of the door closing behind her, and then, nothing. Silence. That was the moment. The moment everything changed. The moment I realized that my life, my marriage, everything I thought I knew, had just come crashing down in the span of a few sentences. And as the weight of it all sank in, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I don't remember how long I sat there, alone in the room, trying to process what just happened. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. I heard the sound of Zoe's footsteps fading down the hall, her presence slipping away like sand through my fingers. I wanted to call out, to stop her, to beg for an explanation, but my body refused to obey. The numbness took over, the weight of her words pinning me to the chair. For a long time, I just sat there in the dark, the house unusually silent. The ticking of the clock on the wall felt like a countdown to something I wasn't ready to face. It felt as if the very foundation of my world had cracked, and I was left standing in the wreckage, unsure of where to go next. I thought about the past few months, trying to piece together the signs, the subtle shifts in her behavior that I had either missed or ignored. There were the late nights at work, the sudden insistence on going out with friends, the way she started to spend more time on her phone, always texting or scrolling through something. I dismissed it at first, convinced that it was nothing. After all, we were both busy. But now, sitting there in the aftermath of her confession, those small moments replayed in my mind like a film I had never fully watched. I tried to recall the last time we had a real conversation, one where we weren't just going through the motions. I couldn't remember. There had been no spark, no connection, just the routine of everyday life that we both blindly followed, without realizing that we were slowly drifting apart. It wasn't until Zoe spoke those words, "I'm not in love with you anymore," that the truth hit me. It wasn't sudden. It had been happening for months, maybe even longer, and I had failed to notice. I had failed her, and now I was facing the consequences of my ignorance. After what felt like an eternity, I stood up, my legs shaky, and walked toward the living room. I could see her things scattered around, her purse on the couch, her shoes by the door. It was as if she had already made up her mind to leave, even before she said the words. I reached for her purse instinctively, not knowing why, and pulled out a crumpled note from the side pocket. It was a piece of paper with a phone number written on it, one I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a moment, my heart sinking deeper into my chest. Who was this? Was it someone she had met recently? Someone who had replaced me? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But the thought lingered, gnawing at the back of my mind. I put the note back in her purse and tried to shake off the feeling of betrayal that was creeping up on me. I needed answers. I needed to confront her. But the problem was, I didn't know where to start. What was I supposed to say to the woman who had just shattered everything I thought I knew? How do you ask the person you love the hardest questions when all you want is the truth, but fear the answer more than anything? I paced around the house for a while, my thoughts running in a million different directions. Eventually, I grabbed my jacket and walked outside. The night air hit me like a slap in the face, sharp and cold, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring at the empty driveway. I thought about leaving, about getting in my car and driving until I could escape the weight of the situation, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. I had to face this head on. I called her phone. The ringtone on the other end was a cruel reminder of the life I thought we had built together. When she picked up, there was a long pause before she spoke. "Simon?" Her voice was softer now, almost distant, like she had already put up the walls that would keep me out. "I don't understand," I said, my voice trembling despite myself. "What do you mean you're not in love with me? How did this happen? We've been fine, haven't we?" She didn't respond immediately, and when she did, it was with a weariness that made my heart ache. "It's not something that just happens overnight, Simon. It's been building for a long time. I've tried to tell you in little ways, but I don't think you were listening." I bit back the urge to argue. She was right. I hadn't been listening. I had been too wrapped up in my own world to notice the growing distance between us. The truth was, I had been blind. And now it was too late. "I don't want to do this over the phone," she said, cutting through the silence. "I don't think we should talk anymore." "Zoe, please," I pleaded, the desperation in my voice becoming more apparent. "I need to understand. I can't just let you walk away without knowing why. You owe me that." "I don't owe you anything," she snapped, her tone sharp now. "I've made my decision. I've given you all the chances to fix things, but you didn't do anything. This isn't about you anymore, Simon. It's about me." With those final words, she hung up, leaving me standing there, holding the phone in my hand as if it were the last connection to the life I once knew. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing, my heart heavy with confusion and anger. How had it come to this? How had we gone from love and laughter to this cold, final goodbye? I didn't have the answers, and I wasn't sure I ever would. But one thing was certain, the person I thought I knew was gone, and in her place was someone I didn't recognize. The days that followed felt like a blur of emotions. It was as if the world had suddenly stopped spinning, and I was left suspended in midair, trying desperately to find solid ground. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I knew had been turned upside down. Zoe had walked away without even looking back, and I was left in the wreckage of a life that suddenly felt foreign. My routine, which once felt comforting, now seemed like a daily reminder of what I had lost. At first, I tried to distract myself. I threw myself into work, taking on more projects than I could handle, hoping that the busyness would numb the pain. But no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't escape the constant reminder of her absence. Her things were still in the house, her coffee mug on the counter, her favorite jacket hanging in the closet, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. Every corner of the house felt like a ghost of the life we had shared, and it was driving me insane. I started avoiding the places we used to go. The coffee shop down the street where we'd spend lazy Sunday mornings. The park where we'd take long walks, talking about everything and nothing. Each place held too many memories, too many reminders of what we used to have. I found myself wandering aimlessly, taking different routes home, hoping to escape the reminders of a life that no longer existed. But there was no escape. One evening, I found myself sitting at a bar, nursing a drink that barely touched the sides. I wasn't much of a drinker, but tonight felt different. The bar was dimly lit, the hum of conversation around me almost drowned out by the music playing softly in the background. I had come here to think, to clear my head, but my mind was a jumbled mess of memories and regrets. As I sat there, I overheard a conversation at the table next to mine. Two women were talking, laughing loudly, completely unaware of how their words hit me like a punch to the gut. I heard she left him, one of the women said, her voice dripping with gossip. She finally had enough. I bet he never saw it coming. She's been seeing someone else for months. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or the shock, but I couldn't breathe for a moment. I leaned in closer, trying to catch every word. They said she was with him the other night, the second woman added. She even brought him to that dinner they had planned, the one where he was supposed to meet her parents. The world spun around me. I didn't want to hear it, but I couldn't stop myself. Every word was like a dagger to my chest, each one revealing a truth I had been desperately avoiding. Zoe had been seeing someone else. The thought of it made my stomach churn. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had moved on without me. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, but there was something else too, betrayal. The realization hit me harder than anything I had ever experienced. All this time, I had believed that our problems were something we could fix, something we could work through together. But she had already made her decision, and it had nothing to do with me. I wasn't even part of the equation anymore. I got up from the bar, my hands shaking. I needed to confront her. I needed to hear it from her, to know the truth straight from the source. I couldn't keep living in this uncertainty, in this hell of unanswered questions. I needed closure, even if it meant facing the person who had shattered everything. I went home, but before I could walk through the door, I saw a car parked in front of my house. A sleek, black sports car I didn't recognize. My heart stopped. I didn't know who it belonged to, but I had a sinking feeling I already knew the answer. I stood there for a moment, staring at the car, wondering if it was the same person Zoe had been seeing. Was this the man she had been spending all that time with? The one who had taken my place? I didn't want to believe it, but a part of me knew. There was no other explanation. I walked up to the door, my hand on the handle. But before I could open it, I heard a voice, Zoe's voice, muffled through the walls. She was talking to someone, laughing. The sound of it made my stomach turn. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. I wanted to barge in, to confront her, to scream and demand answers. But something held me back. A part of me knew that doing so wouldn't change anything. This wasn't the woman I had known. She wasn't the woman who once held me close and whispered that everything would be okay. No, she had become someone else entirely. I turned away from the door and walked back to my car. I couldn't stay there anymore, not while she was inside with him. I couldn't face the reality that she had moved on while I was still stuck in the past. As I drove away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality. Zoe had made her choice, and I had no place in her life anymore. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't go back to that house. Not tonight. Not with the weight of the truth pressing down on me. Everything had changed, and I had to face it, no matter how much it hurt. The night stretched out longer than I expected. I drove aimlessly, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than they should have. The city lights blurred in my peripheral vision as my thoughts circled endlessly. Every turn I made felt like a desperate attempt to outrun the inevitable. But the truth was, there was no escape from what was happening. I couldn't outrun Zoe, or the reality of what had become of us. I ended up at the beach, a place that used to bring me peace. I had always loved the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the cool breeze against my face, but tonight it felt foreign. The sand beneath my feet was cold, the sky stretched out in front of me like an endless void, and the silence felt suffocating. There were no distractions here, no noise to drown out the thoughts in my head. All I had was the quiet hum of the ocean and the echo of Zoe's words playing on loop in my mind. "I'm not in love with you anymore." I couldn't stop hearing it. It was like it was carved into my brain, over and over, each repetition more painful than the last. How could she say something like that so easily? How could she just walk away without a second thought? For years, I had believed we were solid. We'd talked about the future, about growing old together. How had we gone from that to this? I pulled my jacket tighter around me and sat on a bench, staring out at the dark water. The reality was sinking in now, and it was harder to breathe. Zoe was gone, at least emotionally, maybe even physically, with the way she had been behaving. But the worst part? I had missed the signs. I had been so wrapped up in my own insecurities, in trying to keep things running smoothly, that I had let her slip away without realizing it. I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that she had been seeing someone else for months. I had noticed the signs, the late nights, the excuses, the way she'd smile at her phone when a message came through, but I had never wanted to confront it. I had told myself it was just work stress, or that maybe she was just going through a phase. I had trusted her, maybe too much. But now, all of that trust felt like it was just shattered glass, scattered around me, sharp and painful. I pulled out my phone, the screen lighting up in the darkness. I saw that Zoe had texted me several times, but I had ignored every single message. Part of me wanted to throw my phone into the ocean, to erase any trace of her from my life, but the other part, the one still clinging to the remnants of our relationship, hesitated. I opened the last message she had sent. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. I just don't know how to fix this anymore." The words were like a slap in the face. She was sorry? After everything I had invested in her and in us, she was just sorry? That was it. I felt the heat of anger flare up in me. How dare she? How dare she think that a simple apology would fix what she had done? But then, just beneath the anger, there was this crushing wave of sadness. I had given everything to this relationship, and it felt like I had nothing left to hold on to now. No answers, no closure, just this empty ache. I could feel my hands trembling as I typed a response, my fingers moving with a mind of their own. "What do you want from me, Zoe? You walked away. You made your choice. So why are you texting me now?" I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the send button, but I didn't press it. I couldn't. It would only make things worse. What was the point of reopening the wound, of giving her a chance to explain herself, when I knew that no explanation would make it better? I stood up abruptly, my phone falling into the sand as I walked away. I couldn't deal with this anymore. I didn't want to be the one sitting here, waiting for a woman who had already moved on. I didn't want to keep hoping that maybe, just maybe, she would come back and realize her mistake. She had made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. I walked toward the water, the cold waves crashing against my shoes, and for the first time in days, I felt something like clarity. Zoe wasn't coming back. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and that was the hardest pill to swallow. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, had become a stranger, and I couldn't keep holding on to someone who wasn't there anymore. I turned around and walked back to my car, determined not to look back. As I got in, the night seemed quieter, somehow. There was no more noise in my head, no more unanswered questions. I had made my decision, even if I didn't know what came next. The one thing I did know was that I couldn't keep living in the past. I started the engine and drove off into the night, the city lights blurring in my rearview mirror. It was time to let go, time to move on, even if it meant facing the unknown, even if it meant starting from scratch. Because in the end, I realized one thing. I didn't need Zoe to define who I was. I was still Simon, and somehow, I was going to figure out who I was without her. The next few days were a blur. My mind was constantly running, my thoughts never quieting. I couldn't shake the image of Zoe laughing with him, the man I had never met but knew existed now. It gnawed at me, a constant reminder of how she had moved on without so much as a second glance in my direction. I didn't want to care, but I couldn't help myself. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smile, but this time it wasn't for me. It was for him. I kept myself busy with work, but even that felt like an escape, a way to distract myself from the weight pressing down on my chest. Every meeting, every email felt irrelevant, a distraction from the growing realization that I had lost everything. But the hardest part wasn't just losing Zoe. It was the fact that I had been blind to everything that led to this. I had never seen it coming. Maybe, deep down, I had known something wasn't right, but I never wanted to confront it. Now, that ignorance felt like a heavy burden. I tried to convince myself that I was better off, that she wasn't the person I thought she was, and that maybe, just maybe, this was a blessing in disguise. But the truth was, I wasn't ready to let go. I wasn't ready to accept that the woman I had planned my life with was gone. And so, I kept busy, hoping time would do its work, hoping that eventually, the pain would fade. But it didn't. One evening, about a week after everything had fallen apart, I decided to take a walk. I had been cooped up inside for too long, and the stillness of my apartment was suffocating. The air outside was crisp, the city lights casting a soft glow across the streets. It was one of those nights where everything felt too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. I didn't know where I was going, but I just needed to move. As I walked, my thoughts once again drifted to Zoe, to the person she had become, the person I couldn't recognize anymore. I remembered the way she used to look at me, her eyes full of love and promise, but now, all I could see was the cold detachment she had shown in the end. I tried to hold on to the memories of the good times, but they felt distant, like a dream I was slowly waking up from. I was so lost in my own thoughts that I almost didn't notice the figure standing across the street, waiting for me. I paused, my mind racing as I tried to figure out who it was. The figure stepped into the light, and my heart skipped a beat. It was Zoe. My first instinct was to turn around and walk the other way. I didn't want to face her. Not yet. Not when everything was still so raw. But before I could make a move, she called my name. Simon. Her voice was soft but firm, and I could hear the tension in it. Please, can we talk? My stomach twisted. I didn't want to talk to her. Not after everything she had put me through. But as I stood there, staring at her, I couldn't help the part of me that still wanted answers. I wanted to know why. I needed to understand what had happened, even if it meant facing the reality I wasn't ready for. I took a deep breath and crossed the street, my legs feeling like lead. I stopped a few feet from her, my heart pounding in my chest. What do you want, Zoe? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. I couldn't hide the hurt in my tone, but I couldn't bring myself to soften it either. She seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if searching for the right words. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, almost apologetic. I didn't want to hurt you, Simon. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to be the one who caused all this pain. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had heard her say the words before, when she had first left, but now, standing here in front of her, they felt hollow. She was sorry? Was that supposed to fix everything? I don't want your apologies, Zoe, I said, my voice shaking despite myself. I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know who you are anymore. Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't read. Guilt, maybe? Regret? But I couldn't tell if it was real. I've been seeing someone else, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. For months now. I thought I could end it with you, but I couldn't, and I didn't know how to fix it. I'm sorry. I really am. My chest tightened. I felt the world shift beneath my feet, like the ground was slipping away from me. She had been seeing someone else. All this time, while I had been sitting at home, hoping things would get better, she had already moved on. I felt the anger flare up again, hotter than before, but I didn't want to lose control. I didn't want to become the person who yelled and shouted and begged for her to stay. I wanted to be better than that. But in that moment, I realized that I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep holding on to something that was already gone. Why now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why come here? Why do this to me? Why not just let me go? She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. Because I owe you that much. I owe you the truth. I should have told you sooner, but I couldn't. I shook my head, stepping back. No, You don't owe me anything. You made your choice, Zoe. You don't get to come back and play the victim now. I turned and started walking away, my steps quickening as I tried to distance myself from the conversation, from the pain. But Zoe's voice stopped me. Simon, please, she called out, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I did, I knew I'd break. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't want to break. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to move on. I needed to. I didn't look back. The days after I walked away from Zoe were a blur of emotions. Each moment felt suspended in time, like I was stuck in some weird limbo where nothing was real. I kept myself busy, diving into work and staying out late with friends who had no idea what was really going on. I didn't tell anyone about Zoe and me, about the betrayal, the finality, the chaos she left behind. I just told them that I was going through some stuff and that I was fine. But the truth was, I wasn't fine. Far from it. I found myself in the quiet moments, in the silence of my apartment or in the dead of night, replaying everything in my mind. Zoe's words echoed through my head. I've been seeing someone else, and every time they did, they felt like a knife to the heart. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen the signs that she had already emotionally left me long before she physically walked out the door? I told myself I didn't care. I'd convinced myself that I was done with her, done with the relationship, that I didn't want to keep living in the past. But every time I woke up in the morning, it felt like I was waking up to a new version of myself, a version who didn't know how to pick up the pieces of a broken heart. And the hardest part? I still missed her. I still wanted to fix things, even though I knew deep down that things couldn't be fixed. One evening, after another long, exhausting day at the office, I was heading home when I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. It was Zoe's car, parked across the street from my building. The sight of it stopped me in my tracks. My stomach twisted, and my breath caught in my chest. She was here. After everything, after walking away, after saying goodbye, she was back. I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to storm over there, to demand answers, to ask why she was standing in front of my life again like she had the right to be there. But another part of me, one that I hated, wanted to go to her, to ask her to explain herself, to beg her to come back. I was a mess of conflicting emotions, and I didn't know how to make sense of any of it. I stood there for a moment, just watching. Zoe wasn't in the car. She was inside. I saw the faint silhouette of her through the curtains of the apartment she had moved into just a few blocks away. For a moment, I wondered if she had come to see me, if this was her way of reaching out, but I quickly dismissed the thought. She had made it clear she was done with me, so why would she be here now? I turned around and walked away, determined to keep walking, to keep moving forward, but my feet betrayed me. I found myself standing in front of her building, staring up at the dark windows. I had no idea why I was here, but I knew I couldn't turn back. I needed answers. I needed to know if she still thought about me, if she ever regretted what happened between us. I needed to know if there was any chance at all that we could ever fix things. But most of all, I needed closure. I didn't knock on her door. I didn't want to invade her space. But I found myself standing outside, staring up at the building, feeling more lost than I had ever felt. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out, my heart sinking as I saw the name on the screen, Zoe. My fingers hovered over the screen, not knowing what to do. Part of me wanted to throw the phone into the street and forget about everything. But another part of me couldn't ignore the fact that this was my chance to hear from her, to finally understand. I answered the call. Simon. Zoe's voice came through the speaker, a little shaky. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know if I can fix what I've done, but I need to talk. Please, can we meet? I stood there, frozen. I had no idea what to say. Was this her way of getting closure, or was she coming back to explain herself? My mind raced, my heart pounding in my chest. I don't know if I can do this, Zoe, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. You made your choice. You left. I thought I was done with you, but I don't know anymore. I know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And I understand, but I'm asking for a chance to explain, a chance to talk. I felt a mix of anger and longing rise in my chest. This wasn't fair. I didn't deserve to be left hanging like this. I didn't deserve to be part of this emotional mess, this twisted game of back and forth. And yet, a part of me still wanted to hear her out. A part of me still wanted to understand why. Where? I asked, my words coming out in a breath. Tomorrow. Same place. Our coffee shop, she said, her voice more certain now. Just give me an hour, Simon. Please. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly as I tried to compose myself. This was it. The moment of truth. I didn't respond right away. I just nodded to myself, even though she couldn't see me. I had to make a decision. I had to either move on, once and for all, or hear her out. It was the hardest choice I had ever had to make. Okay, I finally said, my voice firm. I'll meet you there. After the call ended, I stood still for a moment, staring at the building across from me. It felt like a lifetime had passed since I had first met Zoe. I had been so sure of us, so sure that we could make it. Now, here I was, standing in the cold, unsure of everything, unsure of who I was anymore. But I had to know the truth. And maybe, just maybe, this meeting would give me the answers I needed to finally close this chapter in my life. Or maybe it would just drag me deeper into the confusion and pain I had been trying to escape. Either way, tomorrow would be the day everything would change. The next day felt like a slow march to some inevitable confrontation. I spent most of the morning pacing around my apartment, replaying the conversation from the night before in my head. I could already feel the weight of what I was about to do. I had told myself I wasn't going to show up, that it wasn't worth it, that I didn't need her apologies or explanations. But here I was, checking the clock every 5 minutes, waiting for the right moment to leave. I tried to tell myself I was ready, that this was my chance to put everything behind me, to finally get the closure I thought I needed. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about closure. It was about hoping for something I wasn't sure I could ever have again, the woman I had loved. I hated myself for still clinging to that idea, but the truth was, I couldn't shake it. There was a part of me that wanted her back, that wanted things to go back to how they used to be. But I knew it was a lie. Things would never be the same. By the time I made my way to the coffee shop, my mind was a tangled mess. I tried to keep my head down as I walked in, hoping that no one would recognize me. The place felt different, emptier somehow, like the air had shifted since the last time I'd been here with Zoe. I had imagined it would be a reunion of sorts, but now it felt like a goodbye, a final meeting where everything would change, whether I was ready for it or not. I found a table near the back, away from the window. I sat down, my fingers tapping restlessly on the tabletop. I kept glancing at the door, waiting for her to walk in. I had no idea what I would say when I saw her, but I knew that this was my chance to finally ask the questions that had been eating away at me. Why had she done it? Why had she kept this secret from me? And most of all, why had she left without ever giving me a chance to fix things? I didn't have long to wait. A few minutes after I sat down, I saw Zoe walk in, looking as beautiful as she always did, but something about her was different. There was a coldness in her eyes, a distance that hadn't been there before. She didn't smile when she saw me, didn't give me that warm greeting that used to come so naturally. Instead, she simply nodded, her expression guarded. She took a seat across from me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension in the air was thick, like a storm was brewing. I could feel the weight of all the unsaid words pressing down on both of us. Finally, Zoe broke the silence. "I'm sorry for how things ended, Simon," she said quietly, her voice lacking the warmth I used to hear. "I never wanted it to happen like this." I studied her carefully, trying to read the sincerity in her eyes. But it was hard to see past the wall she had built around herself. She wasn't the woman I had known. Not anymore. And I hated that I was still sitting here, trying to figure out if this was some kind of reconciliation or just another goodbye. "You don't get to apologize for everything, Zoe," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "You left me without an explanation. You moved on with someone else, and you didn't even have the decency to tell me until now. Why should I believe you now?" She flinched, but only for a second. Then, her expression softened, almost pleading. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could get away from it all, from the guilt, but I couldn't. I couldn't keep pretending I was happy when I wasn't." I stared at her, trying to understand the woman sitting across from me. This wasn't the Zoe I had married. This was a stranger, someone who had once meant everything to me, but now felt like someone I barely recognized. "You were never really happy with me, were you?" I asked, the words escaping before I could stop them. Her eyes dropped to the table, and for a moment, I thought she might cry, but the tears never came. Instead, she sat there, quiet and composed, like she had already accepted that we were both too far gone to fix anything. "No, I wasn't," she admitted softly. "I thought I could be. I tried to be, for you, for us. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself. And I wasn't fair to you, Simon. I know that now. I felt the sting of her words like a slap to the face, but I didn't want to show weakness. I didn't want her to see that it still hurt, that everything she was saying was ripping apart the last shred of hope I had left. So you just gave up? I asked, the anger creeping into my voice again. You couldn't even fight for us. I tried, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But it wasn't enough. I thought that if I left, if I walked away, it would be better for both of us. I thought it was the only way I could stop hurting you. I leaned back in my chair, my hands balled into fists beneath the table. This wasn't how I thought this conversation would go. This wasn't the resolution I had imagined. There was no apology that would make everything okay. There was no explanation that would fix the damage she had done. And deep down, I knew I couldn't keep holding on to the idea of us. You left me with nothing, Zoe, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I don't know how to fix this, and I don't think I can. So why are we even here? She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she spoke again. Because I owe you the truth, Simon. And I needed you to hear it from me. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. I nodded, my mind swirling. The truth. It wasn't the closure I was looking for. It wasn't what I needed to move on. But it was the only thing I had left. And maybe that was enough. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't relief or forgiveness, but something else, something stronger. I'm done, Zoe, I said, my voice firm, no longer filled with the uncertainty that had plagued me for so long. I'm done hoping for something that's never going to happen. You've made your choice. Now, it's time for me to make mine. I didn't wait for her response. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop, the door swinging shut behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. It was over. And for the first time, I felt the weight of that truth lift off my shoulders. I was free. The days after that meeting felt like a slow, steady unraveling, but in a way that was strangely freeing. I had made my choice, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the fog lifting. Zoe's departure, the lingering doubts, the heartbreak, it was all behind me now. There was no magic moment of relief, no sudden epiphany that made everything okay again, but there was a sense of peace that began to settle in. I stopped checking my phone for messages, stopped looking for signs of her in every corner of my life. I took small steps toward reclaiming who I was before I ever met Zoe. I rediscovered the things that once brought me joy, things I had pushed aside in favor of trying to fix a broken relationship. I took up running again, something I used to do to clear my head, and started going out with friends I hadn't seen in months. It wasn't about distracting myself anymore. It was about finding the pieces of me I had lost. I found new hobbies, too. I picked up a camera and started exploring photography, capturing moments of life that felt genuine. Something about framing the world through a lens made me feel like I was seeing things in a new way. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the joy of creating something just for me. There was still the occasional pang of longing when I passed the coffee shop where Zoe and I used to go. But it wasn't as sharp anymore. It was just another memory, another chapter that was now closed. Then one Saturday afternoon, I met someone new. Her name was Emma, and we met at a gallery opening. She had that easy smile, the kind that made you feel like you had known her for years, even if it had only been a few minutes. We talked about art, about life, and the conversation flowed like it was the most natural thing in the world. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could be myself without the weight of the past holding me down. We went out for coffee the next week, and then dinner. And over time, something clicked. It wasn't rushed or forced. It was just two people slowly building something real. Something that didn't come with the baggage of old mistakes, of things left unsaid. It felt easy, in a way that made me believe in second chances. Not just with people, but with life. I didn't need to rush into anything. I was still healing, still finding myself, but for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was stuck. I was moving forward, and this time, I wasn't carrying the weight of the past with me. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I was okay with that. I learned that sometimes, closure doesn't come from the person who left. It comes from within, from realizing that you are enough, and that moving on doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means choosing to build something better from it. And so, I took a deep breath, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. There were still challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them. Whatever came next, I knew I could handle it. Because I was free. And that, in itself, was enough.